I have taught about 30 courses in my 12 plus years of teaching career at IIT Delhi, IISER Bhopal, and a few other reputed academic institutions in India. And every single time when an academically weak student came to me asking for advice, all that I could say was work harder. When I look back now, I realize how ridiculous that advice was. Just because someone has not scored well does not mean that they have not worked hard. An otherwise capable student can have low test scores for various reasons. It could be that the student is excellent at one or two subjects but is unable to deal with the variety of courses dumped on him or her. It could be that the student just needs more time to study and is unable to keep pace with the rest of the class. It could also be that the student has talent in an altogether different domain and needs to change his or her field of study. None of these reasons allow us to label the student as weak. Outcome based education, or OBE in short, is a framework that helps teachers in providing effective feedback to all students so that they can make best use of their study time. Schools and colleges that follow OBE guidelines not only provide marks and grades but also help students in identifying their strengths and weaknesses through a scientific approach. Now let's quickly understand how to do this OBE analysis to achieve the goals of outcome-based education. The first step in this process is to understand what is called Bloom's taxonomy. This is a beautiful way of classifying questions depending on the kind of cognitive effort required to answering them. The lowest level, as you can see in this pyramid, is remember, which basically are questions which require use of memory to recall facts and basic concepts. Then as we go higher, we come to the level of understanding where the student is expected to explain ideas or concepts, and then we go to apply, analyze, evaluate, and finally create. These levels can be numbered in this way, starting from 1 up to 6. So BL1 would be remembered, BL2 is understand, and so on up to BL6, which is create. Typically in theory-based courses, we use BL numbers from 1 to 4, and 5 and 6 are typically used in project-based courses. These are of course just guidelines, and things may be different depending on what course you are teaching and to which students. So once you have understood this concept of Bloom's taxonomy, next comes the concept of course learning outcomes. Typically, when we design the curriculum for any class, we mention the subjects and the topics. Course learning outcomes goes one step ahead and one step deeper, and along with the topics, it mentions clearly that what exactly is expected of the student after the course is over. So, for example, if you are teaching a course on physics to school students, you would have CLO1 as understanding Newton's laws of motion, because if they can't even do that, there is no scope for applying anything else. Then CLO2, for example, can be to apply these Newton's laws of motion to find the acceleration of a certain body with a certain mass. And similarly, you can describe CLO3, CLO4, CLO5 and so on. There is no limit to these numbers. You can have 10 CLOs in a course and maybe even 20. So the actual number and the actual CLOs depend on what course you are teaching. But the point is that, don't just restrict yourself defining the topics that you're going to cover in your class, but also clearly mention that what exactly is the student expected to learn, what exactly is the student able to do after he or she has finished your course. Now, once the Bloom's taxonomy level, which is the BL level, and the course learning outcomes, which are the CLO numbers, have been defined by you, the next step is of course that when you set your question paper, for each question, you need to define the BL level and the CLO number. So for example, in this question paper, I have two sections, section A and section B, where section A has 4 questions of 2 marks each, section B has 2 questions of 4 marks each. I have, let's say, the first question, which is define Newton's laws of motion, and this is level 1 because it is just simple recall based on memory, and this is also CLO1 based on the course learning outcomes which I have already defined. The next question, let's say there is a force of 5 newtons which is applied on a body of mass 2 kg. What is its acceleration? So here the student is expected to apply a certain concept learned in the class, and that's why this is BL level 3 and it is CLO2 because this comes from the course learning outcome 2 which I had defined already. So now once you have mentioned the BL level and the CLO number for each question before taking the exam, what you need to do is that after your exam is over, you need to tabulate the marks in the following way. So let's say in my course I had 2 exams, exam 1 and exam 2. So the marks will be tabulated on separate sheets. So let's say if you take exam 1, let's say it had 3 sections A, B, C, where section A had 5 questions, section B had 5 questions, and section C had 2 questions. And let's say the marks for section A was 2 marks each. For section B, let's say it was 4 marks each. For section C, it was, let's say, 5 marks each. Then you have the Bloom level defined for each question, the course learning outcomes defined for each question, and then you have the marks which the student obtained for each question. So if we take Rakesh, he got 0.2 in question 1, 1.8 in question 2, 0 in question 3, and so on. Remember, when you write the Bloom level and the CLO level, just write the number, omit BL and CLO, just write the number. Okay, so this is for exam 1. Similarly, you could have had another exam 2 where you had, let's say, section A and section B, where section A had 4 questions, section B had, let's say, 5 questions. Once you have entered the marks, what you need to do is that you go to this file and you go to download, and then you do Microsoft Excel format. So you need to download this file, and once you have downloaded, you have saved this file. What you do is that you go to this Pariksha portal, which is www.bkushal.com, and you see this Pariksha button over here. You click on this button and you log in using your examiner ID. Now remember that the Pariksha portal is not accessible to everybody as an examiner. So if you need examiner access, please drop me an email and I will enable examiner access for you. So now if you scroll down, what you will see is that this OBE analysis page. So you have to choose your file, and for that you click over here and select your file and then press submit. Once you press submit, the file will be analyzed. The code automatically figured out that you had uploaded 2 sheets in your XLS file and it had 2 exams. Exam 1 had section 3, exam 2 had 2 sections, exam 1 had 12 questions, exam 2 had 9 questions, and so on. So this is the basic metadata for your 2 exams which you had entered. So now comes the interesting analysis of the Bloom's level and the CLO data that has been computed for each student. So we can see that now Albert has a total score of 14.7, and out of 14.7, 3.3 comes from BL1, 6.6 comes from BL2, and 4.8 comes from BL3. So this is the marks obtained by Albert for BL1, and the percentage of the total BL1 marks is 23.57, and this is the z-score. As you know that if you take a number, subtract the mean, divided by the standard deviation, you get the z-score. So this basically tells how is Albert performing in BL1 with respect to the rest of the class, because if you just look at the percentage, 23.57 may be low, but it is possible that the class average itself is low. So to know how well or how poorly Albert is performing with respect to the rest of the class, you need to look at the z-score also. So for Albert in BL1, you have 3.3 marks, which is 23.57 percentage, and a z-score of minus 1.16. Similarly, if you take Gunjan, let's say, has a total of 25.3, which is 31.75 percentage marks. In BL1, he has 7.2 score, which is 51.543, and a BL1 Z score of 0.54. Now, interestingly, you can see that on the overall score, Gunjan has a negative Z score but in BL1, he has a positive Z score of 0.54. So what does that mean? That the overall performance of Gunjan is not that great, but he is performing significantly better when it comes to BL1, which is the first level of the Bloom's taxonomy, which is recall or remember. So what this means is that Gunjan perhaps has a good memory, but he may not be so good at analyzing or applying different concepts. So what this method helps you in figuring out are the various core competencies of the students. Similarly, if you scroll sideways, you can again see that Gunjan has a positive z-score when it comes to CLO1, which means that his overall z-score was minus 0.49, which is quite bad. But for CLO1, again he has a z-score of positive 0.58, which is good. So this again means that although the overall score of Gunjan was not that good, but CLO1 he seems to have understood much better than others in the class. Similarly, you can analyze for different for different BL levels and different CLO levels to get very detailed feedback about every single student. So now instead of just looking at the total marks a student has obtained and classifying them as weak or strong, what you could say to a student is that you may not have performed so well overall, but this is one topic in which you did very well, and this is one topic where you need to improve further. So this helps the student in getting concrete, personalized, useful feedback that he or she can use to make best use of their study time. Because if a student comes to you and says that, okay, I didn't do so well, what do I do? And if you just say that, okay, work harder, now that's okay. I mean, work harder, of course, but work harder at what? This helps you in figuring out that work harder at what, which is a very important question. So next time when a student comes to you, please don't tell him or her just to work hard. Tell him or her where he or she needs to work hard. That will enable a much more efficient use of his or her time. Now, of course, this is a complicated table, and so looking at it and understanding who is performing where may not be very easy. So we now make that task easy for you by figuring out the outliers in your class. So outliers means that people who perform significantly better or worse in a particular Bloom level or CLO as compared to their overall performance. So let's say, for example, there is a girl called Seema in your class whose performance in Bloom level 1 is a positive outlier, meaning if you take her overall performance and if you take her Bloom level 1 performance, you will find that her Bloom level 1 performance is much better than her overall performance, which means that she has an excellent memory, and maybe if she gets some help in applying and analyzing things, then she may be able to do better. In comparison, Manish, Rakesh and Mahendra, they are negative outliers for Bloom level 1, which means that their overall performance has been something, but their Bloom level performance has been significantly lower, which means that they have bad memory. They may be good at applying and analyzing things, but their memory needs, significant help. Similarly, Seema again is a positive outlier for CLO. Sachin is a negative outlier for CLO3. So compared to his overall performance, Sachin has performed significantly worse when it comes to CLO3. Similarly, Rakesh has performed significantly worse when it comes to CLO4. So this gives you very detailed insights into student performance, which will help you in giving personalized feedback which your students can use to make effective use of their study time.